Hello and welcome, it's Chris from Christopher Hold Training. Welcome to this video where we're going to be talking about 3 steps to overcoming pain on the outside of your knee. Now in this little series we've talked about pain on the kneecap and we've talked about pain on the inside of the knee. Now we're moving around to the outside and we're going to be focusing on a muscle called the vastus lateralis. Now as you can see on this middle picture here, is the outside quadricep, or the muscle on the outside of the knee. So it basically takes up this area here. It's the muscle of the quadricep that gets used the most. It's probably the strongest and most powerful muscle of the quadricep, and if it's getting used the most and it's strong and powerful, then it's going to get used and potentially overused. And this is where we then start to find trigger points. So what is a trigger point? It's a small knot in the muscle. These knots can be painful and they are responsible for the majority of all pain syndromes, especially that caused by myofascial trigger points. Now all a trigger point is if you can imagine, as you can see here, you've got all these little muscle fibers. So this big muscle is made up of lots of little fibers. Now these fibers can get sort of, you could say, stuck together and contracted. So when they're contracted, they form these little lumps and they stay in that position, and that's when it becomes painful, and that's when you can start experiencing pain on the outside of the knee. Because as you'll see here, you've got these, let's just say, 3 big trigger points here. So all the X's on this muscle represents a trigger point. So if we've got these 3 X's, you will experience pain in this area here and all the way around the outside of the knee. Then again, if we come to these 2 trigger points here, which are just above the kneecap, you will experience pain again on the outside of the knee, and it will start to go up the leg, and then so on and so forth as we go along here. So what we want to be focusing on is making sure we get this muscle recovered and rehabilitated, and that's what we're going to focus the next 3 steps on. So what we'll do is we'll go through the next slide and we'll get started into the 3 steps. Step 1 is foam rolling the vastus lateralis. So again, as you can see on this picture here, which is a little bit more clear with regards to the quadricep. So you've got the inside quadricep that we talked about before on the inside here. You've got the rectus femoris, which is the quadricep that goes on the top. And then you've got on the outside the vastus lateralis muscle there. So when we come to foam rolling, this is the area that we want to be focusing on. So you would go into this sort of position, as you can see me here. So hands below shoulder. We're trying to keep a straight line and a neutral spine through the torso. And then we just continue that down through the leg. Now what we would do to get onto the outside is I would point my toe, instead of being straight down like this, which would be on the middle of the muscle, I would point my toes towards the window back here. What that would do, that would then take me onto this area of my leg here, which is where the vastus lateralis sits. And then what I would do is I would roll from the knee all the way up to the hip. So I would start by just foam rolling up and down. Now I would do this relatively slowly. I wouldn't do it, it wouldn't take me a minute to go from knee to hip, but I would do it relatively slowly, just up and down. And all that's going to do, that's going to just globally start loosening the muscle. So when we come on to step 2, it makes that a little bit more obvious. So what we'll do now is we'll get stuck into that one. Step 2 is frictions of the vastus lateralis. So what a friction is if you have a knot or a trigger point, like so. Now, if you can imagine this is someone's leg, obviously it's someone's back, but if you can imagine it's someone's leg, you would find that knot, which would be there. Then you would take your thumb, you would place it on the top of the knot, and then make small little circles on top of it. You would also go side to side and top to bottom on it. So you would apply pressure, make circles, go across it, and then go up and down it. And what that will do, that will start to break down the trigger point. Now, if you haven't got the luxury of having someone to do it, or you aren't confident enough to do it with your own thumb, then you can still do it with the foam roller. And all you would do is exactly as I described in the last slide, in that you would roll from your knee up towards your hip. Now, when you get a tender and sensitive spot, you would stop, and then you might just roll gently back and forth on top of it. You may then roll side to side across it. Obviously, you wouldn't necessarily be able to go around in circles, but up and down and side to side across it will give the same effect like a friction, because you're focusing and you're pinpointing on top of the trigger point, and then you're just starting to move across it and up and down, which again will start to break down the friction. Once you finish the frictions, you can then go back to stage one or step one, and then just start globally foam rolling up and down the muscle. So again, that would then finish off ready for step number three. Step 3 is stretching the vastus lateralis. So again, we're looking to stretch the quad muscles. So the most effective stretch is one that would look something like this. So you would be led down either on your front or on your side. You can do it stood up, but for the purposes of this, I would recommend doing it led down. And what you would do is you would bend your knee, bringing your heel towards your bum in this position, and then what that will do, that will lengthen the vastus lateralis, that will lengthen the muscle fibers and stretch out the muscle knot. So if you can imagine, you've got your muscle fiber, and then you've got your little knot, and then it continues as a muscle fiber. What the stretching will do is it will help stretch out that knot. So you've started breaking it down. Then you come on to the stretching, which will not only stretch the muscle globally, so the whole muscle, but it will also stretch out the small little knots, and in a sense further break them down and allow the muscle and the body to recognize that more lengthened position and the more relaxed position of the muscle fiber. So the 3 steps to overcoming pain on the outside of your knee is step number 1, foam roll of vastus lateralis. So foam roll it globally. Step 2 is frictions on the vastus lateralis. So finding or recognizing where your pain is and recognizing where the trigger points are from slide number 1, and then focusing on those areas and performing little frictions either with the foam roller or with your thumb, or you can get someone else to do it if you so wish. And then step number 3 finally is you stretch that out. So then you start bringing a little bit more of a normal function to the vastus lateralis, which will help reduce pain over time. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris. I hope this has been helpful for you. I will speak to you in the next tutorial.